My pride couldn't bear it. I screamed, and my gaze fell on the first man standing beside me. Without thinking, I pleaded. Just for a few seconds. Kiss me. His lips came down on mine. Hot, firm, mercilessly real, and in that moment I didn't realize that the mouth kissing me was the very mouth that gives the order for people to die. The champagne flute trembled in my hand, condensation slipping down the crystal. Like tears I refused to shed. Around me the charity gala hummed with the sound of wealth, designer gowns whispering against marble floors. Laughter that never quite reached anyone's eyes. I didn't belong here, not anymore. 3 weeks ago I would have been on Marcus's arm, playing the role of devoted girlfriend at events like this, smiling for cameras, making small talk with investors and their wives. 3 weeks ago, I still believed the man I loved was capable of loyalty. Tonight, I was here. Alone, courtesy of my best friend Sarah, who'd insisted I needed to get out, to show my face, to prove I wasn't destroyed by what Marcus had done, but standing in the corner of the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall, clutching my champagne like a lifeline while trying to avoid eye contact with anyone who might recognize me from the society pages. I felt exactly as destroyed as I'd feared. The dress I wore was beautiful, a deep burgundy silk that Sarah had lent me because all my formal wear had been purchased by Marcus, and I'd rather burn than wear anything he bought me. My hair was swept up in a style that took an hour to achieve, my makeup carefully applied to hide the shadows under my eyes from too many sleepless nights. I looked like I belonged among these people. I looked like I was fine. I was neither of those things. That's when I saw him. Marcus walking through the crowd like he owned the place, which given his family's wealth, he practically did. And beside him, draped on his arm like an expensive accessory, was her, Vanessa. The colleague he swore was just a friend. The woman he'd insisted I was being paranoid about. The same woman I'd found him with in our bed 2 days before we were supposed to leave for what he'd called a romantic getaway to the Maldives. She wore white, which felt like a deliberate insult. White and innocent when she was neither. The dress probably cost more than 3 months of my rent now that I'd moved into a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn that smelled perpetually of the Indian restaurant downstairs. Marcus's hand rested on her lower back, possessive the same way it used to rest on mine. My stomach churned. I'd known there was a chance I'd see them here. Sarah had warned me, but knowing something intellectually and experiencing it viscerally were entirely different things. The champagne glass shook harder. I set it down on a nearby table before I could drop it, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. I needed to leave. This was a mistake. I wasn't ready to see them together, to face the reality of their relationship in public, to endure the pitying glances from people who knew what had happened. But before I could take a step toward the exit, Marcus turned. Our eyes met. Across the crowded hall, he said something to Vanessa and they started moving in my direction. Panic seized my throat. I couldn't do this, couldn't stand there and make polite conversation while they pretended everything was fine. Well, he probably introduced Vanessa as his girlfriend, like I'd never existed, like the 2 years we'd spent together were nothing more than a footnote in his ascension through New York's social hierarchy. My gaze swept the room desperately, looking for Sarah, looking for anyone who might serve as a buffer. Instead, my eyes landed on him, a man standing alone near one of the museum's famous Greek statues studying the marble figure with an intensity that seemed out of place among the social climbers and networking executives. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that was just long enough to suggest he didn't particularly care about conventional corporate grooming. His suit was impeccable though, black, perfectly tailored, the kind of craftsmanship that whispered of custom work from European tailor. Even from across the room, I could sense something different about him, while everyone else at this gala seemed to be performing for each other, jockeying for position and attention. He stood apart, not awkwardly, Not like he didn't belong, but like he simply existed on a different plane. Like the social maneuvering happening around him was beneath his notice. Marcus and Vanessa were getting closer. I had maybe 30 seconds before they reached me. The decision formed in my mind before I could fully think it through. Born from desperation and too much wine at dinner, and the particular kind of recklessness that comes from having your heart shattered and deciding you have nothing left to lose. I moved. The stranger looked up as I approached, dark eyes, focusing on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Up close he was, even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, olive-toned skin that suggested Mediterranean heritage. There was a faint scar along his left temple, barely visible, the kind of imperfection that somehow made him more compelling. His eyes were the color of espresso, and they tracked my movement with the focused attention of a predator watching prey. I should have been intimidated. Instead, I felt a strange flutter of something I hadn't experienced in months. Interest. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice slightly breathless from my rush across the floor. "I know this is completely inappropriate, but I need your help." One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. He didn't speak, just waited for me to continue, his gaze never leaving my face. "My ex-boyfriend is walking over here right now with the woman he cheated on me with," I said quickly, words tumbling out. "And I can't stand here and make small talk with them and pretend I'm fine when I'm not. And I know this is insane, but I stopped, taking a breath. "Kiss me, please, just for a moment. Make him think I've moved on. Make him think I'm here with someone." The stranger's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement, maybe, or curiosity. He glanced past me, and I knew without looking that he'd spotted Marcus and Vanessa. When his gaze returned to me, I saw a decision being made. Some calculation happening behind those intelligent eyes. "You want me to kiss you to make another man jealous," he said. His voice was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Deep with a faint accent I couldn't quite place. Italian maybe, or Greek. Something that made ordinary words sound like a promise. "Not jealous," I corrected. "Just aware. Aware that I didn't spend the last 3 weeks crying over him, though that was exactly what I'd done. Aware that I'm fine. Are you?" he asked. "Fine?" The question caught me off guard. Something about the way he asked it, the genuine curiosity rather than polite social inquiry, made my carefully constructed composure crack slightly. "No," I admitted, "not even a little bit, but I'd like him to think I am." The stranger studied me for another moment. Then, without warning, his hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing along my cheekbone, in a gesture that was both tender and possessive. "Then let's make him think you are," he murmured. And he kissed me. It wasn't what I expected. I'd been expecting something for show, something theatrical and obvious. Instead, it was deliberate and controlled, and somehow more intimate for its restraint. His lips were warm against mine, the kiss firm, but not aggressive. One hand still cradled my face, while the other settled at the small of my back, drawing me closer. I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle with notes of cedar and something darker, almost smoky. My hands came up instinctively, resting against his chest. I could feel the solid muscle beneath the fine wool of his suit. Could feel his heartbeat steady and strong under my palm. The kiss deepened slightly, just enough to look convincing to anyone watching. And I felt a rush of heat that had nothing to do with the performance and everything to do with the man holding me. When he pulled back, I was breathless. His dark eyes searched mine, and I saw something there I couldn't quite read. Interest, definitely. Interest, but also something else. Something almost like recognition. Though I was certain I'd never seen this man before in my life, I would have remembered. "Is he watching?" I whispered. He's watching, the stranger confirmed, his thumb still tracing patterns on my lower back that were making it difficult to think straight. And he doesn't look pleased. Good, that was good. That was exactly what I wanted. So why did I suddenly not care about Marcus at all? Too focused on the man still holding me like I was something precious. Thank you, I managed. I know that was weird. I'm sorry, I just don't apologize, he said quietly. I'm Dante. The name suited him, classical, powerful, with that hint of Italian heritage I'd suspected. Emma, I replied, and I really am sorry for ambushing you like that. I promise I'm not usually this dramatic. The corner of his mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. I don't mind. Drama, Emma. In fact, I find I'm quite drawn to it. Before I could respond, a voice cut through our bubble. Emma Marcus. Of course, I'd almost forgotten why I'd asked Dante to kiss me in the first place. Too caught up in the actual experience to remember the performance aspect. Dante's hand remained on my back as I turned, his presence solid and reassuring behind me. Marcus stood 2 feet away, Vanessa attached to his side like a barnacle. Up close, she was even more perfect than I'd realized. Blonde hair and beachy waves, model thin with the kind of effortless beauty that came from good genes and expensive maintenance, everything I wasn't. Marcus, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. Vanessa, enjoying the gala. Marcus's jaw was tight, his eyes flicking between me and Dante with barely concealed anger. I didn't know you were coming tonight. Sarah didn't mention it when I spoke to her last week. Of course, he'd been talking to Sarah, probably trying to find out how I was doing, if I was falling apart. The thought made my spine stiffen. It was a last-minute decision, I said smoothly. Dante had an extra ticket and I couldn't pass up the opportunity. The lie came easily, and Dante's hand tightened slightly on my back in what might have been approval. Dante, Marcus repeated, his attention shifting fully to the man beside me. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even alarm. Dante. Salvatore, we've met. Dante's voice was polite, but there was an edge to it that hadn't been there before. Marcus swallowed visibly. No, I've heard of you. Your family's investments in real estate. The import business. He was babbling slightly, which was unusual for Marcus. He was normally smooth, confident to the point of arrogance. You're somewhat of a legend in financial circles. How flattering, Dante said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. His hand moved from my back to my hip, a possessive gesture. That sent a shiver through me. Emma and I were just discussing the Greco-Roman exhibit. Have you seen it? It was a dismissal, polite, but unmistakable. Marcus seemed to recognize it, his face flushing slightly. Vanessa tugged on his arm, sensing the tension, even if she didn't understand its source. We should find our table, she said, her voice high and breathy. The dinner service will start soon. Marcus didn't move for a moment, still staring at Dante like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then his gaze shifted back to me, and I saw something in his expression I didn't expect. Concern, maybe even fear. Emma, can I talk to you for a moment alone? No, I said simply. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Dante. Emma, Marcus started. The lady has made her preference clear, Dante interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I suggest you respect it. There was a moment of tension where I genuinely thought Marcus might push back. He'd always had a problem with being told no, with not getting his way. It was one of the many red flags I'd ignored during our relationship. But something in Dante's expression, or maybe his tone, made Marcus think better of it. Right, Marcus said stiffly. Of course. Enjoy your evening, Emma. He turned and left. Vanessa stumbling slightly in her heels as he pulled her away faster than was strictly polite. I watched them. disappear into the crowd, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and emptiness. That went well, I said. Weakly, then laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical, Dante's hand on. My hip steadied me, his thumb rubbing slow circles that were probably meant to be comforting, but were having a different effect entirely. You're shaking, he observed. I was. Now that the adrenaline of the confrontation was fading, I felt like I might come apart at the seams, the champagne I'd had. Earlier on, an empty stomach wasn't helping. I should go, I said, taking a step back from Dante's touch, immediately missing the warmth of it. Thank you, really, for playing along. I'm sorry I dragged you into my mess. Where will you go? Dante asked. I hadn't really thought about it. Back to my tiny apartment, probably. Maybe order takeout. And watch something mindless on Netflix until I could sleep. Though sleep had been elusive lately. Home, I said. Vaguely. I'll call an Uber. Have dinner with me instead. The invitation caught me completely off guard. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was serious or just being polite. His expression gave nothing away. You don't have to do that, I said. We're all ready. At a dinner, he pointed out. The gala includes a meal. Sit with me, let me ensure your ex-boyfriend spends the entire evening watching you enjoy yourself. It was a bad idea. I knew it. Was a bad idea. Dante was clearly way out of my league. The kind of man who probably had models and actresses fighting for his attention. This was just a momentary amusement for him. A way to pass the time at a boring charity event. And yet, okay, I heard myself say, yes, dinner. His smile, when it came, transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. Excellent, come, he offered his arm. And after a moment's hesitation, I took it. The fabric of his suit was soft under my fingers, and I could feel the solid muscle of his forearm. He led me through the crowd with the kind of easy confidence that suggested he'd been navigating high society events his entire life. People moved out of our way without him having to ask. Conversations pausing as we passed. I noticed several women staring at Dante with obvious interest, their gazes sliding to me with poorly concealed curiosity, and in some cases, envy. Who was I? Their expressions seemed to ask. Who is this nobody on Dante Salvatore's arm? I wondered the same thing. The dinner tables were set up in the museum's main hall, round tables draped in white cloth with elaborate centerpieces of white roses and gold accents. Dante guided me to a table near the front, one with a small placard that read, reserved. The other seats at the table were empty. You're sitting alone? I asked, as he pulled out my chair. I prefer it, he said simply. Most of the conversation at these events is tedious. People trying to impress me or gain favor. It becomes exhausting. And I'm different, I asked as he took the seat beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched under the table. You asked me to kiss you to make another man jealous, Dante said, amusement coloring his tone. You didn't know who I was, didn't care about my name or my reputation. You were simply desperate and honest about it. I found it refreshing. Glad my emotional breakdown could be entertaining, I said dryly. He laughed. A low sound that I felt in my chest. Not entertaining, honest. There's a difference. A waiter appeared with wine, pouring red into our glasses without asking our preference. I took a sip, grateful for something to do with my hands. Across the room, I could see Marcus and Vanessa at their table, surrounded by people I recognized from society photos. Marcus kept glancing in our direction, his expression stormy. Tell me about him, Dante said, following my gaze. Your ex? I didn't particularly want to talk about Marcus, but something about Dante's genuine interest made the words come easier than they should have. We met 2 years ago at a gallery opening. He was charming, successful, came from old money. My mother was thrilled. I thought I was lucky. I took another sip of wine. Turns out he was just looking for someone appropriate to have on his arm for family events. Someone who knew which fork to use and wouldn't embarrass him in front of his investors. And the other woman, Vanessa. They worked together at his father's investment firm. He said I was being paranoid when I said I thought something was going on between them, made me feel crazy for even suggesting it. Then I came home early from a nursing shift and found them in our bed. The memory still stung even after 3 weeks, the shock of it, the humiliation. He apologized, said it was a mistake, that he loved me. But I'd heard him on the phone with her the week before promising her that he was going to end things with me soon, that she just needed to be patient. And yet he seems displeased to see you've moved on, Dante observed. Maybe he expected me to fall apart, I said. To be waiting around when he inevitably got bored with Vanessa and decided to come back. Men like that always think they can return, Dante said, and there was something cold in his voice. They believe the world revolves around them, that their choices are the only ones that matter. They discard people and expect gratitude when they pick them back up. It was an oddly specific observation, and I wondered what experiences had shaped that perspective. But before I could ask, the first course arrived. Some delicate arrangement of scallops and microgreens that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "What do you do, Emma?" Dante asked as we ate. "When you're not crashing charity galas and kissing strangers." "I'm a nurse," I said. "Pediatric ICU at Mount Si. I usually work nights, but I traded shifts so I could come tonight. Sarah was very insistent that I needed to get out." "Sarah is a good friend." Dante said. "She is," I agreed. "She's been keeping me sane these past few weeks, letting me cry on her couch, bringing me food, forcing me to shower, and pretend to be a functional human being." "And are you a functional human being?" I considered the question seriously. "I'm getting there. Some days are better than others. Today was supposed to be a good day, actually. I woke up and didn't immediately think about Marcus, didn't feel that crushing weight in my chest. Then I came here and saw him, and it all came rushing back." "But you didn't fall apart," Dante pointed out. "You walked up to a stranger and demanded he kiss you. That takes courage or insanity. Sometimes they're the same thing." We talked through dinner, conversation flowing with surprising ease. Dante asked about my work, seeming genuinely interested in stories about my young patients, the challenges of pediatric intensive care, the small victories that made the difficult days worthwhile. In turn, I learned that he was involved in various businesses, import-export, primarily with investments in real estate and hospitality. He was deliberately vague about the details, and I got the sense that his business dealings were complex and not entirely suited for polite dinner conversation. He'd grown up in Sicily, moved to New York in his early 20s, and had built an empire through what he called strategic opportunities and carefully cultivated relationships, which told me almost nothing, but I was too caught up in the way he looked at me when I talked, like I was the only person in the room to press for details. By the time dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate creation that melted on my tongue, I'd almost forgotten about Marcus entirely. "Almost. He's still watching," Dante murmured, his hand coming to rest on my knee under the table. The touch sent electricity through me, and I had to work to keep my expression neutral. "Let him watch," I said, surprising myself. With the boldness, Dante's eyes darkened with something that made my pulse race. "Careful, Emma, you're playing a dangerous game. Maybe I'm tired of being careful," I said. "Being careful got me a cheating boyfriend and a broken heart. Maybe it's time I tried something different." "Different how?" His thumb traced patterns on my knee, making it difficult to think straight. "I don't know," I admitted. "But this. Tonight, feeling like someone actually wants to spend time with me, wants to listen when I talk. It's the best I've felt in weeks, so maybe different means taking chances, being spontaneous. Spontaneity can be dangerous," Dante said, but there was approval in his tone. "Sometimes dangerous is exactly what you need." Before he could respond, the dinner service concluded and people began migrating to the museum's other galleries, where a jazz band was setting up for dancing. Dante stood offering his hand. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a question. I took his hand, letting him lead me to where couples were beginning to gather on the makeshift dance floor. The band started, playing something slow and sultry, and Dante pulled me close. One hand spread across my lower back, the other holding mine against his chest. We moved together with surprising synchronicity, and I realized he was an excellent dancer. Not the awkward shuffling most men did at events like this, but actual dancing, leading me with confident ease through turns and steps I didn't know I knew how to follow. "You're good at this," I said, looking up at him. "My mother insisted on dance lessons," he said. "She believed a gentleman should know how to properly escort a lady." "Is that what you are, a gentleman?" Something flickered in his eyes when the situation calls for it. The implication that he could be something other than a gentleman sent a thrill through me that I probably shouldn't have felt. We danced through 2 more songs, and I was hyper-aware of every point of contact between us. His hand burning through the silk of my dress, his chest solid against mine. The way our thighs occasionally brushed as we moved. When I finally glanced around the room, I spotted Marcus standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching us with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Not quite anger, not quite jealousy. Something more like fear. "Your ex looks like he's seen a ghost," Dante observed, following my gaze. "Maybe he's realizing what he lost," I said. Though I wasn't sure I believed it. Marcus had never looked at me the way Dante was looking at me now. Like I was something rare and valuable, like he was memorizing every detail of my face. The song ended and Dante led me off the dance floor toward one of the quieter galleries. We stood in front of a massive painting, some Renaissance piece, featuring angels and dramatic lighting, though I was too aware of Dante's presence beside me to pay much attention to the art. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." The serious tone made me turn to face him. "What is it?" "When your ex recognized my name earlier, the way he reacted, you should know that wasn't just because of my business reputation." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My family, our business dealings, they're not always strictly conventional." I waited, sensing there was more. "I told you I'm involved in import, export, real estate, hospitality. That's all true, but there are other aspects of my business that exist in, shall we say, gray areas. My family has certain connections, certain obligations that complicate matters." Understanding dawned slowly. "You're telling me you're connected to organized crime?" "I'm telling you that my business operates in ways that would make most law-abiding citizens uncomfortable," he said. "I'm telling you that your ex-boyfriend recognized my name because men in his social circle know to be careful around men in mine. I'm telling you that kissing you tonight, dancing with you, it wasn't just helping a stranger, it was marking you as under my protection. Whether you meant to ask for that or not, I should have been frightened. Should have made my excuses and left immediately. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Are you dangerous?" I asked. Directly. "Yes." No hesitation, no attempt to soften the truth. "Have you hurt people?" "Yes." "Would you hurt me?" "Never." The certainty in his voice was absolute. We stood there, the noise of the gala fading into background hum, just looking at each other. I was at a crossroads. I realized I could thank him for a lovely evening, leave and never see him again. Go back to my safe, predictable life. Or I could step forward into something unknown and potentially dangerous, following the strange pull I felt toward a man I'd just met. A man who just admitted to being exactly the kind of person my mother had always warned me about. "I should probably leave," I said. "Probably," Dante agreed. Neither of us moved. "This is crazy," I continued. "We just met. I don't know you, you just told me you're involved in criminal activity." "All true, but I don't want to leave." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Then don't." "I'm not usually like this," I said, even as I stepped closer to him. I don't take risks. I don't kiss strangers or get involved with dangerous men. I'm the responsible one, the careful one. Maybe it's time to be someone else, Dante said, echoing my earlier words back to me. His hand came up to cup my face, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. Emma, I'm going to give you an out, one chance. Walk away now and I'll ensure your ex-boyfriend never bothers you again. Consider my debt to you for that kiss paid in full. Or stay and acknowledge that this thing between us, whatever it is worth exploring despite the risks. I thought about Marcus, about 2 years spent molding myself into what he wanted, being careful and appropriate, and ultimately disposable. I thought about my tiny apartment, my lonely nights, the future I'd planned that had crumbled like tissue paper. I thought about Dante's hand on my face, the way he'd looked at me during dinner like I was fascinating, the feeling of dancing in his arms like we'd been doing it for years instead of minutes. I'm staying, I said. His smile was slow and devastating. Then let me take you somewhere less public. We need to talk, really talk. And I'd prefer not to have an audience. He led me out of the museum through a side entrance where a car was already